Hello, I'm James Preston and welcome to Cowkine's 2022 federal election coverage. Australian citizens are increasingly leaning towards independents and alternative parties outside of the Liberal and Labor duopoly. And one man who has garnered enormous amounts of support over the past 2 years is leader of the Australia One Party, Riccardo Bosi, and he now joins me live on Cowkine. Ricardo, fantastic to have you here once again.
James, thank you very much for your kind invitation. Good to be here.
Well, Riccardo, it's no coincidence your rise to prominence occurred at the height of lockdowns and mandates. Now, the word unprecedented was thrown around a lot during the past 2 years, but arguably the most unprecedented thing was the overzealous reactions from governments.
Oh, without a doubt. By every metric, it was an asinine response. I mean, completely thoughtless, over the top. And the pain has been felt both physically in terms of the health of the nation, on an individual and a collective level, but also the economy is utterly trashed and quite unnecessarily.
Well, one thing that Scott Morrison has been talking about is we've still maintained our AAA credit rating, but I personally don't believe that paints an accurate picture of the actual economic devastation. What have you seen, for example, in your area of Greenway? Has there been a lot of impact on small business, for example?
Yeah, the shots early in the piece were devastating. Around the country, the shops were closed, leases were terminated, and so you don't see the collapsing now because the collapse happened over 2 years ago, progressively, and so small businesses have collapsed. A lot of businesses are still doing well though. The ones that sort of skipped through, and it puts it creates a false impression that things are better than they are. I mean, it's like saying the GDP is great. Well, that doesn't matter when mum and dad can't afford to pay the mortgage or feed their family.
Absolutely. Now, One Nation and a number of other independents have been pushing quite hard for a royal commission into the handling of the pandemic. Do you think that's enough, or would you go even further than that?
Royal Commission is a good start. The question has to be asked, and there's several levels to this. And the first level is, was this accidental? Was it intentional? Was it manufactured? Was it natural? And these are important questions, because if, as we suspect, this was manufactured and intentionally released, this was the most grotesque act of war by international players, among them the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, as well as other globalist organizations. And they should pay reparations. And we're talking about big dollars. So that's the first part. We have to find out who did what, why, and when. The next level is, to what extent was big business in particular and government and the bureaucracy aware of what was going on? And let me give you a little insight. In order to let this plan unfold, which was a eugenics program, a depopulation program, they had to keep enough people fed and watered. And so we had the duopoly of Coles and Woolworths in synchronization, ensuring, and this is going back in time, now think about this, the heavy-duty plastic bags that were both introduced simultaneously at a cost of 15 cents each, and people thought, well, what's this got to do with COVID? Absolutely everything, because they knew they were going to lock us down and needed deliveries made, and the lightweight bags that everyone found useful for their rubbish and the rest of it were removed. So that's just one example, and the home delivery system and the free delivery from Amazon and all this nonsense, which was intended to keep us in our houses.
Ricardo, can I ask what your current stance is on the vaccines? Obviously, last time we spoke, which was probably well over 6 months ago at this point, you were very, very opposed to the entire concept of it. Where do you sit now?
Justified. We were called tinfoil hat wearing loons way back when, and we called it a couple of years back. We knew that this was a lie. And now we're getting the death rates, and just at a very sad metric.
Riccardo, you made mention of judges. They're also not copying it. Now, could you explain to me why you called a South Australian judge an imbecile?
Absolutely, and with pleasure. I didn't actually call him an imbecile. I said you are either an imbecile or corrupt. Because, again, blind Freddy, 10 minutes, grueling research on the internet could find out that these laws that they were applying were completely unconstitutional and unlawful. The 2015 Biosecurity Act, I travelled without a mask when I arrived in Adelaide. The police told me I had to put on a mask, and I said, no, thank you. I was quite polite. I wasn't the least bit pugnacious, and my language didn't get salty. I was smiling and polite. And they showed me a piece of paper and said, well, see, it says here you must wear a mask. And I said, no, thanks, and I don't care what the words say. That's not law. Mandates are not laws. And the Australian people are now quickly learning the difference between that. And the sergeant said, well, we'll have to arrest you then. And I said, well, that's okay. I understand you've got your job to do. Please arrest me. And then, I don't know if you've ever seen a police sergeant ever wet his big boy pants, but he did that, and he ran away and got some advice. And then he phoned down to the 2 constables with whom I was asked to wait, and they gave me a $1,000 fine and sent me on my way. Now, because I was in Sydney when the charge was heard, I received a call from a lovely guy. As I said, the magistrate's probably a lovely bloke. I did my homework, and he is a nice guy. Quite sincere, sincerely wrong, but sincere. And he rang up to say, look, I'm the magistrate, are you going to make a plea? And I said, no, I'm going to read a statement, and then I'm going to hang up. And it was a one-way conversation, and the statement, the short version was, I'm a sovereign being. Your laws, I don't stand under any man or woman or any class of man or woman that presumes to give me orders that are unlawful, incorrect, and you're either an imbecile or corrupt. If you didn't know the difference between the two, and we'll find out which. And so basically I was putting a finger in the face of an unlawful individual, this magistrate, who was pretending to be a judicial officer of the sovereign nation of Australia, which he's not, and trying to force me into a position where I had to plead in front of him. And as far as I was concerned, he had as much authority as my next door neighbour putting on a black gown and telling me that I had to obey him. And so I had to stand up, and I called it my statement of sovereignty. And basically it's leadership from the front by example. Show the people what can be done in order to save yourself. Now, a young woman in another state saw that, used part of my statement as well as some other information to say the same thing to another judicial officer of the alleged judicial officer of the court, and the whole thing was dismissed because it was wrong in law. But I'm sick to death of these judges that presume, these pedophile protectors, because they know exactly what's going on, lording it over the Australian people and using the judicial system as a stick to beat us into submission. Now, this is going to stop. This will end, I promise you. We have it all. Nobody's going to get away with it. Anybody that did the wrong thing, and the Royal Commission is just the beginning. This will take several years to sort out. This is more a Nuremberg 2.0. And I mean that with all sincerity. It'll be properly and judicially appointed and set up. And a small problem is that we've got to find one judge in this country that isn't bent or crooked. But once we can find a couple of judges to do it, this will be more Nuremberg 2.0 than will be a Royal Commission. The form of it, it'll probably be in that form, but I've got to tell you, it's going to be quite brutal, because when the full depravity of what has been visited upon the Australian people is revealed, the Australian people will be furious.